Hey, how's it going, everyone? Just making another video. Today what we're going to be doing, what I'm going to be showing you, is how to add a fuel valve, fuel shutoff, whatever you like to call it, on a lawnmower that has a gravity fed fuel line, basically meaning you can see your fuel line, and you know, I think it's a great thing to do. Honda is the only company that I know of that all of their machines come with a fuel valve from the factory, so you don't even have to do this. But other manufacturers, I guess for whatever reason, just stopped doing it. Briggs and Stratton doesn't do it anymore, along with a couple other different companies. I'm not exactly sure what the reason behind it is, but you know, I'm a firm believer in them. I think they work great. I think there's way more benefits than cons to having them, if you even want to call them cons. Essentially what this fuel valve is going to do is it's going to shut off the flow of fuel going into your carburetor. So if you're a homeowner, or you're someone who's handy, or if you're a plumber in the HVAC company, it's actually the same thing as these guys. So the way we have gas line cutoff valves that allow us to stop the flow of natural gas or with water in your different types of supply hoses, throughout a house, throughout a residence, throughout a building, we want to be able to do it on on our gas lawnmower. So what's the benefit? What's the upside to doing it with this? The first benefit to me is if you have an issue with your carburetor in which your float needle gets stuck because of possible dirt or something goes in it, what'll happen is it'll just keep dumping gas in here, and it'll just kind of leak all over the place. And it's really not a fun situation, especially if you don't notice it, and if you have an attached garage where the smell of, well, first of all, it's a potential hazard having gasoline spilling out in the open, anywhere for that matter, but especially if you have an attached garage and now you're starting to smell gasoline throughout your house, it's just not a really good situation. The other nice benefit to it is it allows you to essentially get all the gasoline out of your carburetor and run it dry. So right before the off season, you do have the opportunity, rather than to drain your whole gas or run it through, if you just flip that valve to the off position, run the machine till there's no more gas in the carburetor, you should essentially avoid any of the issues related to having ethanol gasoline in a carburetor for a long period of time. So those are just two really good examples of why you'd want to do. A third reason would be if you need to work on your carburetor. It's easier just to turn the valve off, and you're only dealing with whatever carb is left on the other side of the fuel line along with inside the bowl, rather than have to go crazy blocking it and moving it like that. Now cons, if you even want to call them cons would be if you have a machine that the carburetor is not okay, meaning that needle valve is not sealing properly. If you have that on, you may not realize that. If you run it, turn it off, put it away, you may not realize you have an issue with it. Now I've been in this situation. I've been buying and selling machines for about 10 years now, and in my earlier days I've had a couple of experiences in which I've bought machines that had these valves put on them, only to find out that they were put on because they were leaking or they needed some attention with the carburetor. So I mean, it is what it is. As long as you're understanding what it is that you're doing, then it is okay. So anyway, let's get to the video. I'm gonna show you how to add a valve, one of these fuel valve cutoffs, to the fuel line. This happens to just be an older machine. I'm actually going to be taking this engine off completely and bringing it to my students so that they can kind of learn how to work on the machine. Just kind of working with basic hand tools to disassemble it, nothing extravagant or crazy. So I figured I'd just use this kind of as a good test example. This is a relatively common engine. This is the Briggs & Stratton 163cc with the overhead valve and the plastic carburetor. So we're gonna use this as our test example, even though, you know, I don't plan on keeping it on it, but for demonstration purposes. So the first thing when choosing a fuel valve, you have two different choices. This first one is what I use primarily. This is just a straight inline. Notice the orientation of the fuel. It goes in straight. And then you have these are, you know, used in different applications. This is has a 90-degree turn or 90-degree angle. Both do the same thing. They turn on and off the flow of fuel in the line. This just allows you to orientate the fuel lines a little different. But for my purposes, I primarily use these on lawnmowers just because you want to look at the path of the fuel line, and usually it's relatively short on a lawnmower and you don't really want to make all kinds of turns and loops and make it look like a roller coaster or anything. You just kind of want to keep the fuel line exactly the way it is without adjusting the length of it. Definitely don't want to make it shorter, and you don't want to make it too long that you have an issue where the fuel is getting crimped. So again, this is a pretty easy thing. These are the fuel valves you have. Make sure that you take a look at it as I'm showing you here. There is an arrow on it which refers to the flow of the fuel. So you want to make sure that arrow is facing towards your carburetor. So you want the back of the arrow towards the back of your gas tank, or the front of the gas tank, and you want the arrow pointing to the carburetor. Most of the time they're always going to be facing this way, for what it's worth. They're always going to be facing the front of the machine. So in addition to wanting the fuel valve, you have these clamps. You could put the clamps on here where the fuel line goes in, where this part of it, the barb, goes into the fuel line. This is one style. These are very common. You just kind of squeeze them with either a needle nose or channel locks, and then you slip it over and then let go and it tightens. You also have this type. This is a good alternative too. These are just simple worm gear hose clamps. You just screw them, you just tighten them up. So, you know, honestly, you don't even need these clamps. I'm just showing you them. They usually come with them, but depending on what machine you're putting it on, they actually both might not fit well. Actually, this one might not fit well. The other one, obviously, you could make it fit. So you don't always need it. It's nice to have, but I don't think it's definitely required. These hold on pretty good. All right, the other thing that you need in addition to the fuel valves and the optional clamps is you need something to release your fuel line. We're going to be taking our fuel line off of this machine. We're going to be setting it down right here, and what we're going to do is we're going to make two cuts, insert this on, and then put it right back on. As simple as that. Probably this video is way longer than the actual time you need to do it, so we're going to get right to it. The way I like to do this is I like to tilt this lawnmower right on its side, just so that whatever fuel is in it can kind of be down here and not a whole lot's going to spill. That right there is what we're working with. Now when you're adding a fuel valve, you want to be considerate. You want to make sure that where you put it